Hi everybody, it's Dianne from Spinal Cord Injuries Australia. I'm the CEO and welcome to our launch. We're very excited today to be launching our partnership with the Accessible Group. This is such an amazing opportunity for both organisations, and we're really pleased to be here to share what the partnership's all about, to talk to you a little bit around how we're going to work together, and also share why we think this is important and the difference this can make to all people that have mobility issues. So starting off, before we get moving, is I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all work today, and pay respect to elders past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal person that is joining us today. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to be here to talk about the partnership. We're going to run through a program at the beginning where we're going to hear from Kerry, Leanne and Ashlee from the Accessible Group. I'm going to have a conversation with you as well about the partnership, but we're also going to give you an opportunity to chat. So at the end of this or partway through, you can also be asking us questions. So there is a chat function at the top of your screen that you should see. And we will be pushing out some questions and pushing out some chats throughout the session. And then at the end, we will also be here to answer any questions you may have. We already know we've got a couple of questions that have come in, so we will answer those and then open up to the floor, and everybody that's here can ask us questions too. So before we get started, Kerry and I are going to talk a little bit about the partnership. So I'm going to talk about the partnership from SCIA's point of view, and then Kerry is going to talk about the partnership from the Accessible Group's point of view. So first of all, for me, I might give you a little bit of an overview of who Spinal Cord Injuries Australia is, and then we're also going to go into why this partnership and why it's important. So first of all, for those that don't know, Spinal Cord Injuries Australia is a national organisation. Our purpose is to assist people with spinal and neuro conditions to thrive. We have a third of our staff we actually employ that have physical disabilities, and we run services in the areas of peer support, accessible accommodation, short-term accommodation. We also have NDIS services in the areas of plan management, support coordination, and exercise physiology and physiotherapy. And we have an employment service. So we run an employment service for people with physical disabilities, and we have advocacy in the areas of spinal and neuro conditions, as well as individual advocacy as well. So we are known to be the peak body for people with living with a spinal cord condition. Part of our work that we've been doing in the organisation is we've set our 3-year strategic plan. And in that 3-year strategic plan, we have two pillars that are really important to us. One of those is employment and assisting and supporting employment of people with physical disabilities. And the other is creating partnerships and opportunities for people in the areas of accommodation. So we're talking about short-term, medium-term, long-term and holiday type accommodation. And this is where this partnership comes in. I've heard so many experiences which have really, and only ones very, very recently, where families have gone on holidays. They've thought that there was, accessible accommodation. They've done so many checks and balances, but they weren't. And sometimes it's very small things like the shower's not right, the doors are not right, just the way the room's set up a lot of the time is an issue. A small step that somebody that isn't in a wheelchair doesn't quite understand that small steps can create lots of problems. I had a very recent situation with one of our more senior staff members who had been on holidays, did all the checks, had a young family, went away, and unfortunately couldn't get into the bathroom. They had to leave and they couldn't find any other accommodation. And this was somebody who is very skilled and experienced at doing all the checks and balances, but even then found themselves in a situation where their holiday was cut short and they had to leave. And unfortunately couldn't find any other accessible accommodation, so went home. And that's just not okay. And we want to be able to change this. And I think this is where, when I met Kerry and I heard all about the accessible group. We are so aligned in terms of our values, what we want to achieve, what we want to see happen in the future, and the platform that's been set up and the passion that both Kerry and the team have to make this happen and make it work is just so exciting for us. You know, we don't have the expertise that Kerry has in the industry, but I think together we can make such a positive difference, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're here to launch today. When we look at the general population, we can see that, you know, there's at least 1 million people that have some form of neuro or spinal condition, which and that's not counting other people that have other mobility issues. So there's also a huge group of people and their families that just don't get to enjoy holidays like the rest of us, and we want to change that. And in terms of the industry, there's also an opportunity to open up and be able to support people and increase the use of their properties and really, I suppose, in our point of view, it's really is an economic benefit as well as just a social benefit. And, you know, together we hope with this partnership we can really build on each other's strengths and expertise and ultimately achieve our purpose, which is to create accommodation that actually is truly accessible and that we don't hear the stories we've heard over the last little while. And we're really looking forward to the future. So I'm going to hand over to Kerry, and she will talk obviously from the accessible group's point of view.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited, and thanks all for joining us. I guess the key reason why we felt a partnership would work so well is we have a lot of shared values, a lot of which Dianne has explained. One, the key being overcoming barriers. In our case, it's travel, and exactly what Dianne's explained. There are benefits. It's a win-win for not just accommodation providers and for people with disabilities as well. Providers benefit in several ways. One, it must be known, obviously, with COVID, that tourism operators have been very greatly impacted with a drop in international travel or stop in international travel. And a lot of tourism operators don't actually realise a few things. The first is that the total market of people with disabilities globally is equal to that of the total Chinese travel market. So you think about the amount of money Australian tourism operators and the government spend attracting overseas travellers, including the Chinese market. There's a ready-made audience right here in our own backyard. In our own backyard, there are 19% of people who have a disability of some form. One thing that a lot of our providers don't actually realise is that 1.3 million Australians with disabilities take a trip at least once a year. So there's a massive market out there for accommodation providers, and there's certainly a really strong incentive to invite and embrace people with disabilities. Obviously, people with disabilities and their families benefit because they get better experience, they get more choice, and they listen to and they're valued. And our goals have always been to ensure that people with disabilities are just treated like everyone else. Accessibility should be the norm and not the exception, and that's one of our key drivers. So that's the reason why we're partnering. There is also, because there's a win for both, there's also a potential for Australia to be the travel destination for people with disabilities. And there's also a potential path to employment for people with disabilities. And so, for example, with working with SCIA, we're hoping to explore the potential for followers for people who are interested in a career path in the travel industry, is to what paths to employment could they possibly take. So that's why we're partnering. I guess I need to explain a little bit more about accessible accommodation. Sorry. Accessible accommodation started with my mum. My mum is the most wonderful, beautiful soul. And on yet another trip where I thought I'd asked all the right questions, we got to Tasmania, gorgeous B&B, and there was no way Mum could get in the shower. And she said to me, "It's all right, I'll hand wash." And the word compromise really stood out like a sore thumb. I don't believe anyone should need to compromise. Yes, we sometimes have to compromise when we're out and about and experiencing everyday life, but when you're going to the expense of booking a holiday accommodation, you need to be able to have a wash, you need to be able to go to the loo, you need to be able to get in and out of that bed and in and out of the doors. So those are really important facts that people need. I guess what we did in the outset is, and I learned this from the outset as well, what I thought my mum's disabilities were, I thought that's what everyone else's disabilities were, and I found that not to be the case whatsoever. So what we did is we did a lot of research beforehand with provision of 50 frequently asked questions. Now, the reason for that is my mum's disability versus, say, your disability, you might have totally different needs, and you may be able to get through a door that's not too wide, but my mum can't. So facts and trusted source of information is why we've, in the 2 years we've been operating, we're doing very well. The other thing is that a variety of properties, whether it's be a houseboat or glamping or a resort or a hotel, there's lots of different experiences to be had, and we've got 160 sites and growing. One thing I would like to talk to you about is our 3-tiered rating system. And the 3-tiered rating system, I will just show you a very short video in a second. All right, I'm just going to show you, sorry, our 3-tiered rating system. It's a very quick explainer. That word qualified is vital. And peace of mind, of course. So we have 3 categories. First is assisted walking. Walking frame or cane users generally go into this category. The second category is independent wheelchair user. So if you're able to self-transfer to bed, to toilet, etc., that would be the category you would fit in. And in the third category is assisted wheelchair user, where you may need some assistance, whether it is a support worker or equipment such as a hoist or electric bed. So this is a highest tier rating system. All right, so I'm just going to pause that now and stop screen sharing, and I'm back now. I hope that worked, everyone. Great. Okay, so as you can see from that 3-tiered rating system, we've kept it simple. It is, for providers, it brings more accountability. So with the amount of information we request from providers, they're accountable. They make a commitment that yes, indeed, the information they've provided is factual. Also, the incentive to improve the offering. And one thing that really excites me is just how many providers have said to us, how do I get to category 3? Or if they're on category 1, how do I get to category 2? And they are more than happy to try and improve their situation. What I'm going to do now is also, I'm going to show you a video tour. And the reason for these video tours being so good is because nothing can be hidden. So I'm just using a very simple example here of a holiday rental. You're able to now see not only did you get in using that metal ramp, but also is there enough clearance for your chair, whether it's a power chair user or not. Is the bed you get hoist in and out? Are there grab rails, and if so, which side are they on? Is there enough clearance to get in and out of the bathroom? And am I able to get out to the backyard? Am I able to be entertained on the deck? Am I able to be included just like everyone else? What are the other living spaces for support workers or carers or other family members? Those pot plants were moved once I gave them feedback that that's going to be in the way. So I'll just now go back. All right, so that's one of several things that we do to make sure that we have accountability with the providers and to make sure that what you see is what you get on arrival. So apart from 50 frequently asked questions, apart from our classification, we have the video tour and we have a hell of a lot of pictures. So that's a little bit about accessible accommodation, and hopefully you've seen where there's synergy with SCIA. And I'm going to talk to have Leanne chat to us. Leanne actually works for us at the Accessible Group, but I met Leanne because she stayed at one of our properties. And Leanne can share with you some feedback of the before and after, before she saw accessible accommodation as the site, and then after. Over to Leanne.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I have I've got a progressive neurological condition that I got as an adult progression. So I've actually the accessible accommodations 3-tiered system is I've actually lived all of them at different times of over the time. So I've progressed from level 1 assistance required to level 3, and I've done all those before I had booked holidays with all those during all that, transition before I found accessible accommodation. So my experiences before were very similar to what Dianne mentioned as well, and what Kerry has said about her, the experience with her mother. The ability to improvise gets worse with each stage, I guess, with each level of, each level of excessive, inability, I guess, that you've got, and also compromises the big, people with disability compromise anyway, and the whole idea of accessible accommodation is to be another step in the kind of the great big sort of framework of meaning that people don't have to compromise, that in any way of in any part of life, as much as they have been up to now. So the few things that I've had are one time where I didn't shower at all for 2 days because I just was I couldn't get in the shower. I was ambulatory but needed assistance, like a walking frame, and I thought that I'd be right holding on to. I bought my suction cup, grab rails, thought that I'd be fine, but it was just too precarious. Because the other thing that's forgotten quite a lot is the slip resistant tiles on bathroom floors too, which is a massive deal when you're uncertain on your feet. And also for carers, that's the other thing too. The for carers as well that need to helping you shower or that sort of thing, you kind of need to be able to move around that. And so I've had that experience where I've decided not to shower at all. Actually, twice that's happened. The other times, and this is what made us get a mobile ramp, which I think everyone should get anyway, is a portable ramp that we just sort of slip in the back of our Kia underneath my chair. Once again, I feel like I'm pretty intelligent. You try and run through all the questions. You feel like you've been qualified on the other end. And then you get there and there is that step. So, you can either squish the sliding door tracks with your 160 kilo plus your weight power wheelchair, or get a ramp and try and fix it up that way. So there's a lot of things. There was another time where I thought I'd be able to make do once again with a shower, but the room was so small. In the end, my husband was helping me, who's my main informal carer, and I was pretty well just clinging onto him the whole time, and he's trying to shower me at the same time, all this terrible stuff that you shouldn't need to no one should have to go through. We just shouldn't have to. Anyway, and then when I found accessible accommodation and stayed at one of Kerry's properties, you can't really explain. There's so much anxiety that goes anyway with having a disability, with different choices that you make. But the fact that you're going to pay all this money, you want to have as relaxing holiday as you can, and you still don't really know. You're always worried that you don't know until you get there what you've got. the fact that I could see, have all the pictures, I could actually speak to Kerry and talk, she could talk me through questions that I had about the property. I can see on the website, with all the questions answered anyway, that, just what I was going to expect, and it was what I expected. So it takes away so much anxiety, not just for me, but for the informal carers, for my family, whoever you're holidaying with. Just to have that one-stop shop where you're comfortable is just pretty well priceless, really. So that's sort of been my experiences. There's more, but I've probably run over time now, haven't I? But the next to speak, I think, is my lovely colleague, Ashlee, and I'll put you over to her. Thanks.
Hi, as Leanne said, my name is Ashlee. I am a mum of 2 and I'm also a T6 paraplegic and have been most of my life. So I understand firsthand the great need for accessible accommodation and for the information surrounding that to be as transparent as possible. I've been working with accessible accommodation for about 6 months now, and in that time we've grown exponentially. My role is continually evolving and I love the variety, and I love that I get to help people with disabilities experience travel and all that travel can bring to a person's life. Recently we have launched Accessible Experiences, which is a sister site to Accessible Accommodation, understanding that the type of information and the questions around experiencing an experience are different to when looking at booking accessible accommodation. The launch of this site is particularly exciting for myself. I am a bit of a thrill seeker. I don't often say no to a new opportunity. I scuba dive, I surf, I've recently started mountain bike riding, so I'm really excited to be able to bring new experiences to people with disabilities that they might not otherwise think that they can partake in. Booking with us, you can be safe in the knowledge that our experiences are properly qualified to be accessible. You won't find, for example, on our website, a water park where the park itself is accessible. You can access most of the park. There's accessible bathrooms, but you can't actually partake on the rides. That's not the type of experience we feel the disabled community is or should have to put up with. So you can be safe in the knowledge that you'll be able to participate in our experiences like anyone else can. We've got many different experiences on the website and you'll be able to see our offering grow in the next few months. We've got everything from airport transfers through to tours of the Blue Mountains and tree climbing experiences. There's something there for all levels of ability. I'm in the unique position, having acquired my disability at such a young age, that I've not had to worry about, or not had the thought of thinking things were easier to accomplish before acquiring my injury. So if I've ever wanted to do anything, I've just worked out a way to do it. And I want other people with disabilities to know that these things are all possible. They might take more preparation and planning, but that's where we come in. We've done the research, we've weeded out the accessible experiences so that you can be confident that an experience you're booking through us is truly accessible. As with accessible accommodation, our experiences are extensively qualified. We ask many questions, the answers to which are all on the website for you to be able to see. There's everything from what's the bathroom set up through to how wide are pathways or what you might need to bring on the day. We've asked all of the questions and then qualified each experience into one of our 3 categories, as were previously mentioned. assisted walker, independent wheelchair user, or assisted wheelchair user, making searching for an experience that will suit a person's individual needs really easy, giving you the reassurance that people who really understand disability and additional access needs have given the experience our stamp of approval. And now I will pass on to Dianne.
Thanks, Ashlee. I think that you can see from the conversations with Ashlee, Kerry and Leanne that this is a quite exciting and unique a partnership, but also the services. I think one of the main things for us is we just want everybody to have the same level of experience and opportunity to be out and about and enjoy their holidays, going and taking on some of the experiences. Maybe we can all be as adventurous as Ashlee is, because I don't know if I'm quite that adventurous myself, but I think that we should be having the choice. You know, people should have the choice, and that's fundamentally what we're saying. And we don't want anxiety. We don't want all of this kind of opportunity where people have to research on top of research on top of research and then still find that there's an issue when they get there. So I think that, you know, hopefully together this is what we can achieve, because this is what we want to achieve. One of the big parts of what we're also doing here is employment is so important for us. So employment and allowing people to have pathways to employment, people with physical disabilities, it really is important for us to be able to also, through this partnership, is to offer opportunities to support employment. As I previously mentioned, SCIA does have an employment service. And this partnership is built on both components, you know, both the idea of people being able to get out and about and enjoy life, but also the opportunities to be able to also gain employment through the partnership as well. So one of the things that we've talked about is one of the beauties of how we'll move forward is that the accessible accommodation and experiences are going to be assessed by people with accessibility needs. So, you know, it'll be assessing, people will assess this with an understanding and knowledge, and they'll be fully trained. And I think that this is part of what's exciting as well. It also means that with the combined reach that Kerry and the team have and we have, is that we think we can get out and assess far more properties, far more experiences, and we would encourage and we want to try and get as many properties and experiences on our list as we can. So the idea is to get as many people and, you know, employed through this process too. The other thing for us is it really is important. What we'd love to see is in some of these accommodation providers, in the areas of the experiences as well, if we could also look at pathways of employment there. So how best to make something accessible is to actually having somebody employed that can actually give you feedback on an ongoing basis and really understand. It'll also mean that, you know, as Kerry and I have talked about, you know, we have a vision that, you know, Australia becomes the place and also a showcase for people with accessibility needs, and they can come here and know that they can have an enjoyable experience, they can go on holidays, and that we know and we can support people and they don't have to have that anxiety that Leanne's talked about. I think we really need to try and change that. And the best way we've found is to employ people. Not only do we have the benefit of their skills, expertise and knowledge in their area of their career area, but also their lived experience just adds for us so much. So it's just so important to us. So as I said, big part of this is also employment. So I'm going to hand over to Kerry and she's going to talk a little bit about the employment from the accessible group's point of view.
Thank you so much, Dianne. And this really, truly is so exciting. There's so many people with disabilities, especially if it's a later onset disability, already have fantastic skill sets. Leanne, for example, had skill sets in bookkeeping that were transferable. Ashlee had a customer service experience that was transferable. And so we already have so many people with fantastic skills, be it marketing, be it front of reception of a hotel. there are just so many options for people with disabilities. So we're hoping that with the resources, the shared resources we have with SCIA and the employment paths, is to talk to industry, travel industry, tourism industry, about how they can employ a person with a disability. So our business, the Accessible Group, we only employ people with disabilities because of the fact that there is an underrepresented amount of opportunities for people with disabilities, and they have such great skill sets. So we've got the contacts, so we have great relationships with accommodation providers, and already we've had a very fantastic expressions of interest as to how we can, the three of us, accommodation providers, the Accessible Group and SCIA, work together to build an employment skill sets and base within the tourism sector. It's quite an interesting point I want to just explain to you. With COVID, when it started, there was about a 90% drop in occupancy for hotels, resorts, etc. And with that came staff being laid off, unfortunately. So what happened is those staff then moved on to other, be it healthcare or technology, other industries. And so what's happened is that now life is starting to get back to normal. There's a shortage of skilled people within the travel industry. And so I think our timing is perfect. And it is such an exciting industry to be in. And the fact that the people that already expressed interest in working with us, they actually have a genuine desire to employ people with disabilities. So there's a lot of scope. We're in the early stages of how we do this, and we would most welcome any level of interest or suggestions. And yeah, so that's that one part. I guess in the meantime, we have to start somewhere. So what Dianne explained is that our goal is to have people with disabilities qualify properties or sites. And so we want to start off somewhere. With accessible experiences, I'm sure so many of you can think of, if I asked you right now, what was a great experience that you had that was accessible, that you could think of at least one. What we're doing is we're offering a $400 voucher to travel within any part of any one of our accommodation sites. And in return is to do a submission for an accessible experience. So the team at SCIA will share with you the links. You'll see all the questions that we would like to know. And of those, we will collate and we will do a random draw, or it might be the best submission. We just need to flesh that out and provide you with a $400 voucher for your submission. And what that will do is also help grow the Accessible Experiences website, and also will help you get experience in the sort of questions that we would need to know for an experienced provider, and exposure in the travel industry. All right, so we're going to do some question and answers. Is that right, Lisa? All right. So we've already had 2 questions submitted, which I'll give some answers, and they're actually fantastic questions. And I'm so happy that that Jeff and Adrienne have taken the time to ask these questions. So I'll read out what Jeff says. I'm a para that's just started working in accessible consulting. So I'm curious to learn about the relationship here and if newer data than the AS 1428.1 provides is used. And AS being Australian standards. Either way, I'm very interested, as I've travelled 25 countries in a wheelchair and often feel this area needs some more standards. So Jeff, my answer is precisely the reason that there wasn't any rating system or any accountability in the travel industry is why we created the 3 categories, and that again holds accountability. When it comes to the Australian standards, With new builds, obviously they have to adhere to the standards to build an accessible suite. So, for example, a new hotel might have a gorgeous bedroom and a fantastically beautiful large bathroom, but there are things that Australian standards don't take into account on the experience once the person with disability is using this bathroom and using this bedroom. And that's where we added our information. And I'll use a couple of examples. The first, if you see any of the new builds, you'll see a wall-mounted folding shower seat that folds down. We've got a group of about 5,500 members in the accessible group, and I conducted a poll. And I said, could you tell me, would a freestanding shower chair or the wall-mounted shower seat work better for you? And the results were around 50-50. And what was explained to me is that if you don't have upper body strength, sitting on that wall-mounted shower seat, you can slide off and hurt yourself. So that wall-mounted shower seat is a government requirement when you're doing a new build, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's that useful for everyone. So standards are one thing, comfort and enjoyment are another. It also, for example, bed clearance. Is there enough clearance under the bed for a hoist to go under should someone need one? So hopefully, Jeff, that's answered your questions. If you've got any more, I'd love to chat to you. The next question is from Adrienne. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She says, my main concern is that when photos are taken of the accessible accommodation, the bathroom photos never show the shower roll in. It's all well and good saying and showing partially accessible showers in particular, when it makes sense to roll in shower in detail. Hopefully this question will be answered in the webinar. Well, Adrienne, you're right. With bathrooms, you've got one or two choices when you have a photographer come in. Choice one is you just do a standard photograph from the entrance, and choice two is you do a panoramic shot so that you can see the step or the lip for the shower. Both those don't work. Yes, we do have a lot of photographs of the bathroom. It's interesting that so many providers don't actually even bother taking photographs of the accessible bathroom, and so that's why you'll see camera phone usage in many bathroom images. But to answer your question, that's why we did the video tour. Going back to my mum, and I saw a photograph of this shower and it looked like it was step free. I'd asked, she couldn't get in it. There was about a 6 centimetre lip. There's no way she could have a shower. By having the video tours, it's real, it's authentic, nothing can be hidden, and it gives you a better idea of perspective. And that's it.
All right, Kerry, don't go away. We have a lot more questions for you, and I think they're mostly directed, best directed to you, Kerry. So the first one is from Carmen. We have only discovered one suitably accessible Category 3 accommodation in the City of Sydney, which we often use for mini breaks. We would love to know if there are more near beaches.
Yes, we've got 160. We attended a travel expo last week, and we have potentially got another 100 coming on board. You're quite right. Sydney is undercooked and underrepresented for accessible accommodation, especially apartment style. And the properties that are listed with us already see that their rooms are being well booked. So my answer to your question is, please join the accessible group, which is a Facebook group. Post your experience of what you've seen and share, because we rely on you and our followers to tell us when they found a great accessible place to stay, and we will definitely be working on getting better in Sydney.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. We've got one from Ross. Have you been able to define how many properties in Australia fall into your 3 levels of accessibility?
As a total, about 900 at least. There's a couple of things to take into account, Ross. The first is that all new builds and renovations, there is now a government requirement for a minimum amount of accessible rooms. So if they're building 100 rooms, at least 5 to 7 of them should be accessible. Sorry, Susie, could you just read back the rest of the question to make sure I've answered it?
Have you been able to define how many properties in Australia fall into your 3 levels of accessibility?
Okay, so in terms of dividing them into the 3 levels, obviously the highest level is the assisted wheelchair user. And yes, there are certainly not enough, and those are the ones that are booked solid, and those are the ones that either have a hoist or electric bed. Predominantly, the middle level is where our majority of our categories come from. Probably around 60–65% of them are in that mid-tier. Again, going back to what I said, and that is the prerequisite for new builds and new renovations to have accessible rooms. Often they meet that middle level. Any other questions?
There are. This one from Carmen, and Carmen, just so that you know, we will send out an email to everybody with the information after this as well. But Kerry, the question is, can you please repeat the name of the website?
Oh, thank you. So the parent, our parent group, our company is the Accessible Group. However, there is 2 websites. One is accessibleaccommodation.com.au and the second is accessibleexperiences.com. Yes.
Kerry, there's another question from Carmen that might need a little bit of clarification, but I'll read it to you and you can answer as best you understand. The current accessible hotels or apartments need to be recategorised. Will you be looking into this? We have attempted to check out apartments and hotels which have accessible rooms only to be disappointed.
Yeah, Carmen, it quite often happens where I'll be contacted by a property who have said, yeah, we've got an accessible option. When I get them to answer our 50 frequently asked questions, including taking measurements, quite often they don't actually meet our standards and we have to say no. So it's all about qualifying. I think that's the key. And they are getting better. A lot of accommodation providers are genuinely saying, what can I do? So using that shower chair example that I just used, going to Bunnings and spending $70 odd on a freestanding shower chair means that they can appeal to all or nearly all except commode chair users. Got a long way to go.
Thanks, Kerry. I've got one here again from Ross. Feedback from real users of the accommodation is key to the success of the venue. What percentage of users provide feedback? Do you survey your customers?
Oh, yes, most definitely. First of all, the Accessible Group on our Facebook page is where we very rarely do we have to go out and look for accommodation. Most times it's recommended by our group members, because if they've stayed somewhere, we know that, okay, chances are they're going to qualify. Did I answer all the questions?
You have. There's one more that I left to last because it requires some technical skill. And somebody asked, can you repeat the second and third tier again? It cut out twice. So I think that's where you're talking about the 3 tiers. And I don't know if you can explain that or if we can share the video again.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so sorry. Okay, I've closed the screen, sorry. All right, so there's 3 categories. One is assisted walking. Assisted walking is your walking frame or cane user, where some accessible amenities will come in handy. Our absolute baseline is that it's step-free, whether it's a ramp, but it's got to be step-free. That's the baseline for assisted. And so assisted walking, sorry. All right. Those are predominantly, say retirees, they might have had a hip replacement. They need the convenience that accessibility offers. Category 2 is where the most of our properties fall, is independent wheelchair user. So a little bit like Ashlee, where Ashlee can self-transfer from the bed to the chair and anywhere else. So there's semblance of independence, and that's probably why it's probably the most popular category. The third category is assisted wheelchair user, where Leanne would come into. So Leanne needs assistance, whether it be a hoist, whether it be an electric bed, or whether it be a support worker. I hope that is clarifying.
That's fantastic, Kerry. Thank you. We have lots of comments and thank yous and things like that, but we don't have any more questions. So if we want to hand over to, I think, Dianne to wrap up, and Kerry.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed listening to the launch, and I think it's as I said, it's you can see how informed and how much expertise the Accessible Group actually has in this area. So I'm so excited to be part of this partnership and to see what we can achieve in moving forward. So just a quick wrap up. I think for us, what we're really trying to do here is we want peace of mind for everybody to go on holidays, have fun, have choice, have options, and not have the anxieties and the stress that currently we find people have. So we're hoping that this is going to achieve that, and that together we can make such a positive difference. This also, as Kerry and I have mentioned previously, this makes good economic sense. You know, as well as it's the right thing to do, we want choice, control, you know, etc. It's good economic sense as well. You know, this is really creating an opportunity for the travel industry and the hotel industries to kind of come together and say, we can do this, and we can be what we'd love to see, both the Accessible Group and SCIA. We'd love to see Australia being the role model for the rest of, for other countries. You know, if they can listen, if we can make this work, we can then be the role model, and the organisations that join us can also be role models. And fundamentally, this can make such a positive difference in people's lives. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you all. And you know, look out for those opportunities to be involved. As I said, we're looking to employ more people as well through this experience, through this partnership, and you know, and I just think that together we can achieve a lot. So thank you again, and we look forward to sharing the journey of the partnership and to hearing more positive stories. Thank you.